When humanity joined the Galactic Alliance, nobody expected their greatest contribution to be bureaucracy. But our story begins well before that notorious mountain of paperwork existed back when humanity still swung swords more than they signed forms, and admin was just a short shift in the mess hall. This is the tale of Jenny Thorn, how she evolved from a scrappy young warrior into a woman destined to shuffle papers so effectively she'd one day bring entire alien war fleets to their knees with the swift stroke of a pen. Chapter 1. Swords and Scribbles.
Block, thrust, disarm!
Sergeant Marcus Thorn, towering, broad-shouldered, with a bellow that could wake the dead, drilled commands into the chilly morning air. Jenny, his 16-year-old daughter, grunted as she attempted to keep pace with two older cousins in a dusty courtyard. Her bare arms ached from hours of sword practice. This was not her idea of fun weekend plans. But in a colony settlement obsessed with martial prowess, you didn't argue with the family patriarch unless you had a death wish or a cleverly hidden stun grenade. Jenny liked to think she had some skill with a blade. On good days, she could land a decent strike on the practice dummy. Still, her heart wasn't in it. While her father glorified the clang of steel, and her mother, Lieutenant Astrid Thorn, taught advanced tactics for crushing enemies' windpipes, Jenny found herself more fascinated by how, for instance, the settlement's meal rations were so meticulously tracked on a battered old clipboard in the corner.
Why does anyone care about how wide your stance is if you can't prove on paper that you're supposed to be here? Also, did I file that ration request form? Wait, do I even have the authority to file ration requests?
Jenny!
Her father barked, knocking aside her sword with one effortless swing.
Eyes up! You're daydreaming again!
Gritting her teeth, Jenny resumed the spar. Her father's disapproving scowl could have melted titanium. Clearly her mind was somewhere else. Somewhere lined with neat rows of documents, not sweaty sparring dummies. Chapter 2. A curious pile of paper. The settlement where Jenny grew up was no luxurious paradise. It had steel walls, guard towers, and the constant echo of marching drills from the training grounds. If you didn't know better, you might think Earth had never moved past the medieval era. Except the swords were alloy steel, the catapults had laser tips, and the local blacksmith took credits, not coins. But behind all the adrenaline and bristling weapons lurked the settlement's modest administrative building. A single clerk, Ms. Lucia Winters, 50-something, always in a crocheted shawl, managed everything from water ration forms to lost and found logs. One which said,
"If found, one suspiciously slimy helmet. Please claim before it grows legs."
For Jenny, that office was an oasis. When she finished practice, and sometimes even before she was technically allowed, she snuck in there, eyes alight, and pored over battered binders of old records, discovering that paper was powerful, as one mislabeled ration form could send canned peaches to the wrong quadrant and spark a riot among the soldiers, and that neat handwriting was a game changer, especially compared to Ms. Winters's scrawl, which resembled a spider learning calligraphy, prompting Ms. Winters to once remark admiringly of Jenny's crisp, angled script.
"You should be teaching me, dear."
One day, Jenny was elbow-deep in a stack of dusty files labeled Form T-17, Training Equipment Request. She found it wildly entertaining that all spears, swords, and laser lances had to be requested via a 3-page form.
Seriously, what if you needed a spear mid-battle?
She giggled, imagining a general yelling,
"Enemies at the gate! Someone fill out page 2 for immediate spear release."
She heard a throat clear. Ms. Winters loomed above her, arms folded.
Having fun in the land of forms, dear.
Jenny dropped the file, scattering a confetti of old pages.
I'm sorry. I was just...
Miss Winters smiled.
Don't be. You're the first person in years who actually wants to be in here.
She pressed a file back into Jenny's hands.
Finish up. Then maybe help me relabel our supply requests? I can't read half my own handwriting.
Jenny's heart soared. She was about to get an official, top-secret, definitely unglamorous job as Ms. Winters' assistant. She didn't know it yet, but this was the first step on her comedic journey toward unstoppable bureaucratic might. Chapter 3. Mixed Priorities. The next morning, the clang-clang of swords rattled in Jenny's ears. Her father, Sergeant Thorn, had her practicing with an advanced shock blade that hummed ominously. The tip glowed purple, and it made her hair stand on end. Literally. She tried not to imagine the inevitable haircut if she swung it wrong.
Focus, Jenny!
Her father snarled, jabbing forward.
I am focusing!
She insisted, deflecting the blow, but nearly dropped the blade when she remembered she was supposed to help Ms. Winters revise the quarter's armor requisition forms.
What if Miss Winters has no idea how to attach the compliance addendum to the main form? She could mix up references to subsection 2B. Wait, I think Dad's about to...
Clang. Her father disarmed her with one swift strike. He glowered as the shock blade skittered across the dirt.
We fight to protect what's ours.
He intoned, as though reciting a family mantra.
One day, you'll see that only strength keeps this settlement safe.
Jenny rubbed her wrist, eyes drifting to the old administrative building on the far side of the yard.
Sure, Dad. Strength is great. But you know paper can be pretty powerful, too.
Her father snorted.
Paper can't stop a sword.
True. But it can stop the delivery of swords. Imagine that.
Jenny gave him a cheeky grin. Surprisingly, he didn't respond with anger. He just sighed.
Finish your drills, then do whatever you do with those dusty files.
Chapter 4. An Unexpected Opportunity. By the time Jenny turned 17, Ms. Winters was basically trusting her with every piece of administrative grunt work possible. Final checks on daily logs, verifying the numbered sword polishers in stock. Answer: too many or not enough. And writing up requests for additional guardrails because the recruits kept falling off the watchtower while trying to do push-ups. One afternoon, Ms. Winters ambushed Jenny with a form so crisp and official that Jenny practically felt her mouth water.
The Central Command Academy is looking for fresh minds,
Miss Winters said, eyes twinkling.
They started a program in advanced administration, trade negotiations, that sort of thing. Interested?
Jenny's heart hammered. She pictured a sprawling campus of lecture halls, where forms were revered instead of resented, where a neat signature was basically currency.
Can I apply?
She asked, voice cracking in excitement.
Of course.
Miss Winters brandished a pen.
Sign here, here, initial that little box, and also fill out the certification of willingness to attend possibly boring classes. Yes, that's a real title.
Jenny was practically squealing inside, but she managed a calm nod. Could this be her ticket out of mandatory daily sword fights? She was about to find out. Chapter 5. The Academy, where paper is king. Weeks later, Jenny lugged a duffel bag into the Central Command Academy's fortress-like campus. Spires soared overhead, training fields sprawled in the distance, and a suspicious number of stern-faced instructors paced around, barking at wide-eyed recruits. At first glance, it looked like an extended version of her home settlement, more yelling, more sweaty cadets. But inside the newly designated administrative wing, everything changed. The smell of paper and coffee lingered, and the beep of computerized logbooks replaced the clash of steel. Students chattered about specialized topics like efficient seal stamping, supreme clause navigations, and surviving government-approved nap breaks 101. Jenny felt goosebumps of pure joy. Her first class was Foundations of Galactic Administration with instructor Celeste Kavanaugh, a wiry woman who wore glasses on a chain and possessed the lethal aura of someone who could fill out a 40-page form in one breath.
"We are no longer mere soldiers.
She proclaimed to the class.
We are the ones who keep them in line. The pen is mightier than the sword, mainly because it can revoke the sword's budget."
Laughter rippled through the room. Jenny grinned. These were her people. The next few months were comedic chaos. One day, an over-enthusiastic classmate set off an alarm by misfiling a battle-ready request under lunch menus. Another day, Jenny found herself pulling an all-nighter to cross-reference each planet's local hunting license requirement for a fictional scenario. She discovered her own superpower, the ability to remain both thoroughly awake and borderline giddy while completing mind-numbing forms in triplicate. Chapter 6. Adventures in Paperwork. While the rest of the Academy's cadets practiced advanced combat with energy shields and blaster lances, Jenny and her administrative peers practiced rubber stamp drills and speed filing. They even staged comedic competitions to see who could alphabetize 500 documents the fastest. Jenny usually won, to the dismay of a classmate named Todd, who swore she must have bionic eyes. Instructors sometimes teased them.
Don't you want to join the real battlefield?
They'd say, passing by with a sneer. The admin wing students would cheerfully reply,
"Why bother? Our paper can cancel your battlefield anyway."
This banter eventually led to friendly cafeteria debates over who really held power. Answer: the ones who can freeze your supply lines. Meanwhile, Jenny diligently filed forms for scholarships and housing allowances. The comedic irony was not lost on her. To be recognized for skill in bureaucracy, you first had to bureaucratically prove your skill in bureaucracy. She marveled at the delightful loop, and she happily filled out each square, line, and bullet. In truth, though, she missed her parents. Despite her father's gruff attitude, she knew he wanted the best for her. Her mother wrote a letter once, congratulating Jenny on passing those weird admin classes. The letter read, in typical Astrid Thorn fashion,
"You better come back able to outsmart all the pencil pushers, or at least show them how to do 50 push-ups while holding a quill."
Classic mom. Chapter 7. Whispers of the Wider Galaxy. Near the end of her second year, rumors flooded the Academy's halls.
An alien species named the Vraxians has made contact.
They were rumored to be huge, red-eyed, heavily armored, with a love of conquest. Whispers said they'd conquered entire star systems simply by glaring menacingly and possibly brandishing very large swords. The Academy's leadership was abuzz with speculation. Would Earth send envoys? Would Earth get invaded? Or would Earth politely ask the Vraxians to sign a no invasions before 9 a.m. form? Jenny's comedic side conjured an image of an alien warlord roaring.
"You have come to devour your..." Wait, is that a line? Why is there a line?
Then came the official announcement. Ambassador Riven, a top diplomat, rumored to have 70 silver tongues and 100 half-finished cappuccinos, was forming an elite group to facilitate Earth's earliest interspecies negotiations. They needed skilled administrators with keen minds and excellent penmanship. Jenny's name was flagged as a candidate. Her acceptance letter arrived stamped with 14 different approvals. A record, apparently. Jenny had never been so excited to see a piece of paper And for her, that was saying something. She was about to venture onto Fort Horizon, an orbital platform where Vraxian representatives would eventually appear. She spent the night giddily packing spare forms, advanced pens, and a half-dozen emergency coffee pods. Chapter 8. Fort Horizon. Paperwork? Ahoy! The shuttle ride to Fort Horizon was almost too smooth. Jenny kept waiting for some comedic mechanical failure so she could whip out a repair request form. Instead, the real shock came once she stepped off the docking ramp. Fort Horizon was a swirling testament to Earth's new ambitions: glossy corridors, shining control panels, and staff from across the planet. Soldiers marched to and fro, but they occasionally paused to let scurrying administrators pass with precarious stacks of documents. The center of the station boasted a massive ring-shaped conference chamber, the stage for any upcoming alien negotiations. Ambassador Riven himself welcomed Jenny, eyes baggy from all the late nights.
Jenny Thorn, right? Academy's top paper jockey. Glad you're here. It got a wave of new visitors soon, and we need to ensure no one starts a war because they forgot to initial the last page.
Jenny saluted awkwardly. She was never great at the rigid formality.
I'm ready, sir. Just point me to the nearest form.
Riven gave a short laugh.
He'll get along fine.
She settled into a cramped bunk within the administrative quarters, barely big enough for her and her mountain of stationery. The comedic aspect? She was in the same corridor as heavily armed Marine troopers who towered overhead, all giving her odd looks as she squeaked by, arms full of binders. She overheard one grunt whisper.
Is that our secret weapon?
Another hissed back.
If her phones keep me from leaving on time, I'll show her a weapon.
Jenny just clutched her files tighter.
We'll see who's unstoppable,
she thought. Chapter 9. First contact and a little panic. Then came the big day. A Vraxian ship, shaped like a giant spiked sword with too many engines, docked at Fort Horizon. Alarms blared with dramatic flair. Soldiers fanned out, weapons at the ready. Jenny was stationed near the landing bay with a small diplomatic team, sweaty palms gripping her official pad. The Vraxians marched out, tall, broad creatures with cracked, leathery skin and cunning red eyes that looked capable of incinerating a man from 50 paces. At their forefront was Commander Thrax, every bit as intimidating as the rumors claimed. He wore jagged armor that clinked ominously and carried a sword that looked like it could cut Fort Horizon in half and possibly the entire planet, if he sneezed. Ambassador Riven stepped forward.
Welcome, Commander Thrax, to Fort Horizon. We're honored!
Thrax raised a spiked gauntlet to hold him.
We come to see if your species is worth negotiating with, or if we should just skip to conquering.
Jenny suppressed a nervous snort of laughter. This guy's comedic timing is impeccable. She tried not to imagine him filling out a sign-in sheet. Thrax's gaze swept over the humans and locked onto Jenny. She stared right back, heart hammering. His lip curled, and for a moment she expected him to roar something about puny humans. Instead, he just exhaled a low growl, turned to Riven, and said,
"Show us what you've got."
Chapter 10. A comedy of negotiations. They moved to the Grand Conference Chamber. Vraxians on one side, humans on the other. Jenny sat between Riven and a fidgety translator, her digital tablet open to the pre-drafted terms. She felt the weight of the entire future of Earth-Vraxian relations pressing on her shoulders. No big deal, she told herself. Just a standard, unstoppable alien war machine versus plucky human scenario.
We require acknowledgement of all the territory we have conquered,
declared a Vraxian lieutenant, slamming a massive fist on the table.
And we also demand that your planet's armies never cross into our realm.
Riven smiled diplomatically.
We can discuss mutual respect for territories. In return, we request safe trade routes.
Thrax's red eyes narrowed.
What do you mean, trade routes?
Jenny coughed politely.
Yes, Commander. We've prepared a preliminary document.
She tapped her tablet, flicking the text to a large holodisplay for everyone to see.
If we can ensure a corridor for commercial ships, we can...
You talk of commerce, but we value conquest.
Thrax snapped.
What do we gain from letting your ships sail by unchallenged?
Taxes!
Jenny said, her voice a little too cheerful.
You could impose shipping levies, which we pay. It's all in form. T99, trade and toll provisions.
Thrax's eyebrows twitched at the word form. Some of the younger Vroxians behind him shifted uneasily, glancing at each other like someone had said a forbidden incantation. Jenny continued briskly.
Page 2 outlines the maximum allowable tariff based on cargo type. For instance, fruit and vegetables, 5%. Laser lance components, closer to 30%.
Thrax's scowl deepened.
So you pay us to not attack you? That's intriguing.
Riven coughed delicately.
It's not exactly bribery, Commander. It's, structured cooperation.
Chapter 11. Thrax versus the Form. After hours of back and forth, both sides seemed interested, if only out of mutual confusion. But Thrax wasn't finished. He stepped away from the table, crossing thick arms.
If you want Vraxian respect, you must prove you have a warrior's soul. That your words aren't empty.
Jenny stiffened. A warrior soul? She grew up in a warrior settlement but had always been the paper nerd. If only Dad could see her now.
Perhaps a demonstration.
Thrax suggested.
To show us your skill?
Jenny's internal monologue went wild.
Oh dear. They want to see me swing a sword? Or do they want me to dropkick a security guard? Wait, maybe they want me to arm wrestle? I am so going to lose an arma.
Ambassador Riven coughed.
Commander, we came prepared for a more administrative display. Unless you're open to, say, an interpretive glance.
Thrax waved that off, turning a stern gaze on Jenny.
You, with the forms. You have spirit. I can sense it. Show me you are strong enough to back these cling. Defy me in single combat.
A hush fell. Jenny's face burned. She pictured her father, mother, and every sword lesson she ever half-slept through. Riven put a hand on her shoulder.
You're not obligated.
But Jenny surprised even herself. She stood up, swallowing terror.
Commander Thrax, I propose a compromise.
She held her tablet tight.
I will face you in the combat style that best represents me.
Thrax cocked his head suspiciously.
Speak clearly, human.
Jenny tapped her tablet, pulling up a short, brand-new form. Form C1. Challenge by bureaucratic engagement.
If I can prove my authority by besting you in the domain of documents, you will acknowledge Earth's terms. But if you find a contradiction, or if I falter in my record-keeping, you'll have grounds to tear up our treaty. Deal?
The entire hall exploded in whispers. A hush followed, all eyes on Thrax. He stared at Jenny, seeming to weigh the gravity of her words. Slowly, he nodded.
You want the fight with paper?
I do.
Jenny's heart hammered like war drums, but her face remained calm.
Paper is mightier than the sword, right? Don't fail me now, O great stack of forms.
Chapter 12. Battle of the Forms. 2 hours later, the conference chamber was rearranged into something akin to an ancient arena, minus the bloody sand. On the left, Commander Thrax, scowling, arms folded, wearing that monstrous sword on his back. On the right, Jenny, slightly trembling but determined, a tower of blank forms behind her. The rules were simple. Jenny would demonstrate Earth's newly drafted interplanetary cooperation contract, page by page. Thrax could interrupt at any time with a challenge, pointing out any contradictory clause or illogical subsection. If Jenny failed to resolve it on the spot, Earth's claims would be declared void. If she succeeded at every challenge, the Vraxians would agree to sign. Riven was the judge, standing at a podium, trying not to look like he wanted to hide under it. Round 1. Jenny read the opening preamble in a clear voice. Thrax snorted.
You claim we must respect mutual borders, but you also require free passage. Contradiction.
Jenny flipped to an attached clause.
Subsection 4, line 12. Free passage is limited to the designated corridor outside recognized Raxian territory. No contradiction.
Thrax's snort turned into a growl. The crowd murmured, impressed. Round 2. Jenny unveiled the tariff structure. Thrax barked.
You humans pay us for safe shipping. What if we decide we want more than your maximum shipping tax limits? Contradiction.
Jenny pointed to a footnote.
Footnote 3. Parties may request tariff adjustments in the event of increased cargo value. Subject to arbitration. We planned for that, Commander.
The onlookers gasped, some scribbling notes or exchanging bets on how long Jenny would last before Thrax found a fatal error. Round 3. Thrax, growing desperate to corner her, demanded,
What if my warships fly through your territory? You humans are weak. You claim peace. Won't you just let us pass with no penalty?
Jenny calmly flipped to a fresh page.
Section 9, Military Transit Protocols. If a Vraxian fleet enters a restricted zone, you must submit Form M78, permission for non-hostile passage, 72 hours in advance or face full trade suspension.
Thrax's eyes bulged.
Suspension of all trade?
Jenny smiled sweetly.
Yes, Commander. It would be a shame if your empire lost income from, say, the entire galaxy. Right?
Thrax took a half-step back, a flicker of genuine respect in his expression. Even the Vraxian lieutenants shuffled, whispering to each other. Some looked relieved, others downright nervous. Chapter 13. Victory by paper. By the final round, Thrax was red in the face, hard to tell if that was his natural color or frustration. No matter how he probed or growled, Jenny had a clause, footnote, or cross-reference at the ready. It was as if she held an infinite deck of gotcha cards. At last, Thrax threw up his gauntleted hands.
No, I yield to your paper onslaught.
A collective exhale whooshed through the room. The comedic image of a towering warlord succumbing to a barrage of documents was not lost on anyone. Jenny's grin threatened to split her face in half. Thrax trudged forward, looming over her. For a nerve-wracking second, Jenny thought he might snap her in half instead. But he bowed, just a fraction, and growled.
You have proven that your words have weight. Vraxians respect strength, and your forms are unexpectedly strong.
He extended a clawed hand, which Jenny shook carefully, hoping he didn't crush all the bones in her wrist. Then, with a theatrical flourish, she presented the final document, the preliminary Earth-Vraxian Accord. Thrax signed it in a broad, savage scrawl that practically tore through the paper. Jenny let out a silent cheer. She actually did it. Warrior ways or not, she had made Earth's first major pact with the fearsome Vraxians, through the comedic might of bureaucracy. Chapter 14. A comedic aftermath. After the cheers and stares, Jenny collapsed into a chair. Riven patted her shoulder with a grin.
You just performed the greatest bureaucratic takedown I've ever witnessed. Congratulations!
Thanks.
Jenny mumbled, rubbing her aching fingers.
Hey, you deserve a rest.
Riven started to walk away, then paused.
But maybe just fill out a quick rest and recuperation request first, okay?
They both laughed. Then Jenny froze, wide-eyed.
Wait, we actually do have a rest request form?
I was joking.
Riven chuckled.
But if you want to draft one, I'll sign it.
Jenny was this close to pulling out a blank template, but she decided she could at least let the comedic moment land. Chapter 15. One step closer. Word of Jenny's triumph spread like wildfire. Suddenly, she was the talk of Fort Horizon and then the talk of Earth. The comedic headlines read, Alien Conqueror, Conquered by Contract, or Human Saves Planet with Pen, Gains Alien Frenemy. Commander Thrax, in interviews, gave short, irritated remarks about how humans had too many forms, but no one missed the grudging admiration in his tone. Soon enough, Jenny was swamped with new tasks. The ambassador assigned her to draft a full suite of interspecies forms, anticipating more alien contacts. She hammered out pages of new protocols. From Form L452, landing bay etiquette for tentacled species, to Form B900, bureaucracy as a means to enforce peace. Turns out she was quite proud of that one. Meanwhile, Earth itself was buzzing about the possibility of joining some rumored galactic alliance, a giant interstellar coalition. The comedic reality was that humans, once known as brash warriors, had found an unexpected calling, unstoppable mastery of official procedures.
You're telling me we can unify star systems just by making them fill out the right forms?
Her father asked incredulously one day on a holocall.
Yes, Dad.
Jenny replied, failing to hide a grin.
Just think, you won't have to do those exhausting morning drills if the entire galaxy is too busy requesting Form W10, permission to engage in warfare.
He let out a bark of laughter.
I always said the pen might be mightier than a sword. Still can't believe my kid's the one proving it.
Chapter 16. The Birth of a Bureaucrat. Over the next year, Jenny's comedic daily schedule involved waking up at dawn, inhaling 3 cups of coffee, skimming through roughly 497 forms requiring urgent signatures, attending half a dozen negotiation sessions with species who either hissed, clicked, glowed, or slime, dripped their way through conversation, and racing back to her desk to finalize new forms regulating everything from starship docking fees to the ratio of chairs to tentacles in conference rooms. In the middle of all that madness, Commander Thrax kept popping by for the occasional chat, which really meant he was having trouble with some new form. One day, Jenny found him outside her office, giant arms crossed, glaring at a stack of paper like it had personally insulted his honor.
Form He 477. Request for exemption from Form B221 due Galactic Emergency.
He grumbled, nearly crumpling the entire stack with one hand.
I already filled out B221.
Jenny bit back a laugh.
Yes, but the footnote says if you didn't have an official galactic emergency to expedite, you actually need G477 to confirm that.
Thrax's eye twitched.
You humans are insane.
We prefer the term thorough. Let's walk through it together.
Part of Jenny found these comedic interactions endlessly satisfying. Sure, Thrax could sever a tank with his blade, but put him against a well-structured form and watch him break out in a nervous sweat. Every time he left her office, though, he seemed a little less hostile, a little more impressed, maybe even fond. Chapter 17. Humanity's New Identity. Eventually, the day arrived for Earth's official acceptance into the Galactic Alliance. Dozens of species from across the stars converged on Earth for a summit. Jenny was appointed the chief human liaison, the unstoppable queen of forms. She oversaw every detail, from the color of the conference table to the number of safety disclaimers posted in hallways. Yes, she posted disclaimers for disclaimers. The comedic highlight was watching proud human generals who once believed only muscle mattered stand around, trying not to look baffled by the administrative flurry. Some bravely attempted to read the Alliance Charter's 300 pages. Most gave up and asked Jenny for summaries.
In short,
She told them.
the galaxy wants us in. All we have to do is not start any wars without filling out 16 different forms first.
One general gulped.
Well, that's a lot of form.
Jenny nodded cheerily.
You have no idea.
In that grand ceremony, each representative signed the Galactic Alliance Charter. Jenny watched in pride as humanity, once famed for brandishing swords, now brandished binders. When it was Earth's turn, she guided her superiors through each line. They scribbled their signatures. A dozen alien species cheered or hissed, or buzzed, or glowed in applause. Chapter 18. Final Steps. That evening, after the confetti had settled, Jenny found herself in a quiet moment, sitting on a bench overlooking the newly minted Galactic Service Center building. Inside, an army of administrative staff was already establishing the forms that would define the Alliance's day-to-day operations: immigration forms, trade logs, warfare de-escalation forms, you name it. She spotted Commander Thrax prowling the corridor, scowling at a document kiosk as it spat out endless disclaimers. She gave a short laugh, remembering the day they first met.
Who would have guessed we'd end up here?
Jenny sat there, thinking.
We started as scrappy warriors with swords, forging alliances through grit and steel. Now we're signing 10-page disclaimers about how much confetti is acceptable at a peace ceremony. Maybe Dad was right. There's more than one way to protect humanity. And maybe I'm living proof that a well-placed signature can do what an army sometimes can't.
Epilogue. The paperwork prequel. And so, the prequel to humanity's infamous bureaucracy draws to a close, but only to make way for the saga that follows. Jenny Thorn began life in a dust-laden training yard, forced to wield a shock blade. She discovered a hidden passion for forms and procedures, rising through the ranks of the Central Command Academy, until her unstoppable pen and knack for planning bested even the mightiest alien warlord. While Earth once stood proud as a warrior race, the day would come when the entire galaxy groaned under the weight of Form G315, Form B221A, and Form X 999. And at the heart of it all stood Jenny, smiling sweetly from behind an administrative desk, ready to bring peace and mild torment to any who dared defy the meticulously typed lines. Because in the end, when humanity joined the Galactic Alliance, nobody expected their greatest contribution to be bureaucracy. But thanks to Jenny Thorn, that's exactly what happened. And in a hilarious twist, the galaxy would never be the same.